In 6th century Arabia, survival dictated the rules. The harsh desert landscape bred a society where showing mercy was often viewed as a fatal weakness. Historians refer to this era as Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance. Tribes were locked in generational blood feuds that could last for decades, triggered by something as trivial as a dispute over a watering hole. The extreme pride of tribal culture led to a devastating social practice. Families, fearing poverty or the perceived shame of having a female child, would bury their infant daughters alive in the sand. Right in the center of this harsh environment, in the year 571 CE, a child named Muhammad was born. He was born into a culture that measured a person's worth by the power of their clan. Yet, by entering the world as an orphan, he occupied the most vulnerable and overlooked position in Arabian society. His early life was marked by immediate vulnerability. His father passed away before he was even born. By the time he was 6, he lost his mother, Ameenah, and 2 years later, his protective grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, died as well. Following local custom, he spent his earliest years away from the city, living in the desert with his wet nurse, Halima. Even then, her household noted a sudden, unexplainable abundance, a barakah, or divine blessing, that seemed to follow the boy. Growing up as an orphan kept him on the margins of Meccan high society. This isolation kept him away from the excessive drinking, gambling, and idolatry that consumed the local youth. Under the care of his uncle, Abu Talib, he took on humble work as a shepherd. Tending to flocks in the harsh hills required deep patience and constant care. While other Meccan youth were raised in the heart of tribal politics and city vices, his years in the pastures kept him in the silence of the hills. He reached adulthood without ever having participated in the drunken gatherings or the idol worship that defined his generation. As he entered adulthood, he took on the difficult work of commerce, guiding trade caravans across the grueling routes to Syria. Meccan markets were notorious for deceit and shortchanging, but his exactness in business stood out. He returned every trust and kept every promise, earning him a title from his peers, Ameen, the trustworthy. His reputation caught the attention of Khadija, a highly successful and discerning merchant. She entrusted him with her wealth for trade, and impressed by his character, initiated a proposal. Their marriage became a partnership defined by her fierce loyalty. Together they built a family, but they also faced severe heartbreak. They endured the agonizing grief of burying multiple infant sons, weathering the kind of pain that tests a person's spirit. Long before he ever spoke of prophecy, his empathy and unbreakable honesty were tested in the real-world crucibles of high-stakes trade and devastating personal loss. This historical image shows the Kaaba set against the rocky terrain of Mecca. Years later, when flash floods damaged the ancient sanctuary, the city's tribal leaders agreed to rebuild it together. But as the walls went up, a bitter argument broke out. Looking closely at the eastern corner, you can see the Black Stone, or Hajar al-Aswad. The dispute was over which tribe would get the ultimate honor of lifting this sacred relic into its final resting place. Weapons were drawn, and the city stood on the brink of another bloody war. They agreed to let the next man who entered the courtyard decide. That man was Muhammad. He asked for a cloak, placed the stone in the center, and instructed the leaders of each rival tribe to grab an edge and lift it together. He then guided the stone into the wall himself. With a single practical gesture, he dissolved the tension. He demonstrated an innate ability to unify fractured groups and lead with absolute justice. You can see here how the city sits directly under the shadow of the surrounding mountains. Despite his standing in the community, the widespread idolatry and moral decay in those streets below weighed heavily on his mind, pushing him to seek quiet out in the high-altitude peaks. He began spending days at a time isolated in the cave of Hira on Mount Nur. Away from the noise, he focused on Tawheed, the concept of a single, undivided God. Then, during the Night of Power in the year 610 CE, the silence of the cave was broken. The angel Jibril suddenly appeared to him. The physical pressure of the encounter was crushing. The angel embraced him tightly and delivered a single terrifying command: Iqra, read. Trembling violently, he rushed down the rocky slopes and returned home to Khadija. In a state of pure shock, he begged her, Zamiluni, Zamiluni, cover me, cover me." She wrapped him in garments and assured him that God would never humiliate a man who cared for the poor and kept his word. She then took him to her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, a Christian scholar, who confirmed that this was the very same angel that had visited previous prophets. In the days that followed, Jibril returned to teach him the physical purification of wudu and the movements of salah. Slowly, a small circle formed. His young cousin Ali and his close friend Abu Bakr were among the very first to accept his message. For 40 years, his life as an orphan, a merchant, and a grieving father shaped his character. He had been molded into a man of flawless integrity. But the struggle to replace the darkness of Jahiliyyah with a new light was only just beginning.